Hi everyone. Today we look at CAT 2019 Slot 2 Section 1 VARC, one of the reading comprehension passages which had come in this slot. I'll be reading out the passage first, then we'll try to make sense of the passage and then go to the questions. The magic of squatter cities is that they're improved steadily and gradually by their residents. To a planner's eye, these cities look chaotic. I trained as a biologist, and to my eye, they look organic. Squatter cities are also unexpectedly green. They have maximum density, 1 million people per square mile in some areas of Mumbai, and have minimum energy and material use. People get around by foot, bicycle, rickshaw, or the universal shared taxi. Not everything is efficient in the slums though. In the Brazilian favelas, where electricity is stolen and therefore free, people leave their lights on all day. But in most slums, recycling is literally a way of life. The Dharavi slum in Mumbai has 400 recycling units and 30,000 ragpickers. 6,000 tons of rubbish are sorted every day. In 2007, The Economist reported that in Vietnam and Mozambique, waves of gleaners sift the sweepings of Hanoi streets, just as Mozambican children pick over the rubbish of Maputo's main tip. Every city in Asia and Latin America has an industry based on gathering up old cardboard boxes. In his 1985 article, Carl Thorpe made a statement that still jars with most people. The city is the most environmentally benign form of human settlement. Each city dweller consumes less land, less energy, less water, and produces less pollution than its counterpart in settlements of lower densities. Green Manhattan was the inflammatory title of a 2004 New Yorker article by David Owen. By the most significant measures, he wrote, New York is the greenest community in the United States and one of the greenest cities in the world. The key to New York's relative environmental benignity is its extreme compactness. Placing 1.5 million people on a 23 square mile island sharply reduces their opportunities to be wasteful. He went on to note that this very compactness forces people in the world's most energy efficient apartment buildings. Urban density allows half of humanity to live on 2.8% of the land. Consider just the infrastructure efficiencies. According to a 2004 UN report, the concentration of population and enterprises in urban areas greatly reduces the unit cost of piped water, sewers, drains, roads, electricity, garbage collection, transport, healthcare, and schools. The nationally subsidized city of Manaus in northern Brazil answers the question of how to stop deforestation, give people decent jobs. Then they can afford houses and gain security. 100,000 people who would otherwise be deforesting the jungle around Manaus are now prospering in town, making such things as mobile phones and televisions. Of course, fast-growing cities are far from an unmitigated good. They concentrate crime, pollution, disease, and injustice as much as a business, innovation, education, and entertainment. But if they are overall a net good for those who move there, it is because cities offer more than just jobs. They are transformative. In the slums, as well as the office towers and leafy suburbs, The progress is from hick to metropolitan to cosmopolitan. Now let's try to make sense of what we read. The author talks about the magic of squatter cities. What is a squatter city? A squatter city is a city where people have unlawfully occupied land and made it their own. And he says that they're improved steadily and gradually by their residents. Planners would say that squatter cities are chaotic, but the author believes that to his eye they look organic. He also says that the general perception seems to be that squatter cities are not green, but he says they are unexpectedly green. Why? Because they have maximum density, minimum energy and material use, and people get around by all modes of transportation. He balances his view by saying that not everything is efficient in the slums. He gives an example of the Brazilian favelas. Favelas are, of course, slums where electricity is stolen. But he says that in most of the slums, recycling is literally a way of life. He also talks about the Economist, which spoke about waves of gleaners. Gleaners are those who carefully go through and obtain something useful from garbage. Sift the sweepings of Hanoi streets, and that happens in almost every city of Asia and Latin America. Then he moves on to talk about Calthorpe's 1985 article, where he had made a statement that still jars with most people. Jars would mean that it does not sit properly, it disturbs a lot of people. Now, what was Calthorpe's statement? That the city is environmentally benign, is the most environmentally benign or friendly form of human settlement. Then he goes on to talk about a New Yorker article by David Owen, where David Owen wrote about New York being the greenest community in the United States and one of the greenest cities in the world. So, very clearly, in the first three paragraphs, the author talks about squatter cities in a different way from what we would imagine them to be. He talks of them to be green, to be efficient, maybe not perfect, but he says it's one of the most uh, efficient forms of human settlement. Then he talks about the nationally subsidized city of Manaus in northern Brazil, which answers the question of how to stop deforestation. So, apparently, in this city, people have been given jobs, and because they can then afford houses and gain security, people who would otherwise be cutting trees are now prospering, making things such as mobile phones and televisions. Again, he balances his view, saying that fast growing cities are far from an unmitigated. Unmitigated would mean absolute here, absolute good. He's saying they're far from being an absolute good because they concentrate things like crime, pollution, disease, and injustice as much as they do a business, innovation, education, and entertainment. But he says they are an overall net good for those who move here, not just because they give jobs, but because they are transformative. A person who comes here goes from being from a countryside to a city which has got people from all areas of the country to finally a city which is people from all areas in the world. So, if we try to crunch this passage is about squatter cities, how people look at it differently, and the author's view about these squatters. We now look at the questions that follow this particular passage. So, question 1 says, which one of the following statements would undermine the author's stand regarding the greenness of cities? Now let's try to understand this question first. The author has a stand regarding the greenness of cities. Now, from what we have read, it is very clear that the author considers cities to be green, efficient, allowing a lot of compactness and maximum density and minimum energy use, etc. Now the question asks us that what would undermine? That is, undermine here would mean that would, bring down the effectiveness of the author's stand. So we have to pick that particular option which would undermine the author's stand regarding the greenness of cities. Let's look at option 1. The compactness of big cities in the West increases the incidence of violent crime. Even if we keep this to be true, even if this is true, this is not connected with the greenness of cities. So we can safely eliminate this answer choice. We come to the second one. Sorting through rubbish contributes to the rapid spread of diseases in the slums. This may be true from what is written in the passage. The author talks about sorting through rubbish. He also talks about concentration of diseases. However, this has not much to do with the greenness of cities. So this too we can eliminate. Third says the high density of cities leads to an increase in carbon dioxide and global warming. Now, this statement, if it were to be true, definitely undermines the author's stand regarding the greenness of cities. Because if this were true, that means cities are not really as green as the author would like us to believe. So, this becomes our answer. And let's also look at 4. 4 says, over the last decade, the cost of utilities has been increasing for city dwellers. Now, this may be true. However, this increase in the cost of utilities has nothing to do with the greenness of cities. So, we can safely eliminate option 4 also. So, we have eliminated options 1, 2 and 4, and 3 becomes our answer. We look at question 2 now. Question 2 says, from the passage, it can be inferred that the cities are good places to live in for all of the following reasons except that they, and then we have to complete that. So first let's try to understand the question. So from the passage, we can come to a conclusion, that is infer, that cities are good places to live in for certain reasons. The options now will have some of those reasons, if not all of those reasons. But there will be one which will be not a reason why cities are good places to live in, as inferred from the passage. So let's look at the options. The first one says, help prevent destruction of the environment. Now this, it is written in the passage that cities are environmentally green and they, due to their compactness and minimum energy use, are helpful towards the environment. They are a benign form of settlement. And so this is one of the reasons that we can infer that the city is a good place to live in. So this cannot be our answer. So we can safely eliminate this option. Offer employment opportunities. Now from the passage, we can also come to the conclusion that one of the reasons that a city is a good place to live in is because it offers employment opportunities. So this cannot be a reason why it is not a good place to live in. So we can also safely eliminate this option. Third says, contribute to the cultural transformation of residents. Now, from the passage, we can also come to the conclusion that one of the big reasons why cities are good places to live in is because they're transformative in their experience. And a person can go from hick, that is from a country side dweller, to a dweller of a place which has got citizens from all over the country, to a dweller of a place who has got citizens from all over the world. So this is a good reason of why cities are good places to live in. So this cannot be our answer. That leaves us with option 4. Now option 4 says have suburban areas as well as office areas. Now a city may have suburban areas as well as office areas, but we cannot infer from the passage that that is one of the good reasons that a city is a good place to live in. So very clearly this becomes our answer. So from the passage it can be inferred that cities are good places to live in for all of the following reasons, except that they have suburban areas as well as office. We look at question 3 of this passage now, which says, in the context of the passage, the author refers to Manos in order to dash. So we have to complete this particular sentence. Okay, we have to always keep in mind that this question talks about a reference which the author makes, but it has to be in the context of the passage. So obviously we go back to the passage where Manos has been mentioned. And if we look at the second last para, we can see that the author has mentioned Manos as a city that answers the question of how to stop deforestation. That is by giving people decent jobs. And once they're given decent jobs, then they do not go about deforesting the jungle around Manos. So now let us come back to the question. So obviously the author has referred to Manos in the context of the passage to talk about an example where a city, by giving jobs to its residents, can mitigate the effect of deforestation. So let's look at the answer options. Explain where cities source their labor for factories. So very clearly the author does not refer to Manaus to explain how cities source their labor. So we can safely eliminate this particular option. Explain how urban areas help the environment. This is a good possibility because by an area becoming urban, okay, it sort of helps uh, mitigate the problems. If you look at 3, describe the infrastructure efficiencies of living in a city. Very clearly, the author does not refer to Manaus to describe the infrastructure efficiencies of living in a city. He has already done that earlier through mentioning New York and certain other statistics. So 3 is clearly out. 4, promote cities as employment hubs for people. Now this is a tricky option. So though Manos, okay, acts as a place where people have been given jobs, the author does not refer to it for this reason. He refers to it clearly to make a point how a city, by giving jobs to its people, can shift their attention from deforestation to making things like mobile phones, etc. So very clearly, 4th is also not our answer choice. That leaves us with 2. That is, the author refers to Manos in order to explain how urban areas help the environment. And this is, of course, in the context of the passage. We look at the fourth question of this passage, which says, according to the passage, squatter cities are environmental friendly for all of the following reasons except, and then we have to sort of complete it. Um, Now, of course, we have to understand this question. So, in the passage, obviously, there are some reasons that have been given why squatter cities are environmental friendly. Now, in the options, either some or all of these reasons will be mentioned. But there will be one option which could be true of a squatter city, but which is not a reason why it is environment friendly. We have to pick that particular option. Now let's look at the option. Their transportation is energy efficient. The passage talks about energy efficient transportation. That is one of the reasons why a squatter city is environment friendly. So this cannot be our answer. We can safely eliminate this particular option. 2. They sort out garbage. The passage goes to great lengths to talk about gleaners, recycling, and sorting of garbage. Is that one of the reasons why a squatter city is environmental friendly? Yes. So this cannot be our answer because we want the except part. So we can eliminate option 2. We look at 3. They recycle material. Again, the passage has spoken about recycling material. A squatter city, is it environmentally friendly because it recycles material? Yes. So it cannot be our answer since we need an except. So we can eliminate 3 also. This leaves us with option 4. Their streets are kept clean. Now we don't know whether squatter cities have streets that are kept clean. The author does not mention that in the passage. But even if he were to mention it, is that a reason why squatter cities are environmental friendly? We really can't draw any correlation. So this becomes our answer. So according to the passage, squatter cities are environmental friendly for all of the following reasons except their streets are kept clean. So our answer option is the 4th one. We look at the 5th question following this passage. We can infer, that is, come to a valid conclusion, that Calthorpe's statement still jars with most people because most people. Okay, so let's try to understand this question. Very clearly, Calthorpe has made a statement that does not sit properly with most people. And the question asks us to infer why that could be the case. So, obviously, we have to first go back to what Calthorpe said to understand why this may be the case. So, if you look at the passage paragraph 3, first line, it says, in his 1985 article, Calthorpe made a statement that still jars with most people. Now, what was that statement? The city is the most environmentally benign form of human settlement. Each city dweller consumes less land, less energy, less water, and produces less pollution than his counterpart in settlements of lower densities. This is where his statement ends. So, we can come to the conclusion that most people do not look at cities to be environmentally friendly or benign forms of settlement. But Calthorpe made a statement that the city is the most environmentally benign or friendly, and so it disturbed and did not sit well with most people. Now let's go back to the question. We can infer that Calthorpe's statement still jars with most people because most people, then we have to complete this. 1. Consider cities to be very crowded and polluted. Now, this could be a very, very good reason why it jarred with people. So, this could be an answer. Let's look at the other options. Most people do not regard cities as good places to live in. If they were to regard it as that, Kaltop's statement would still not jar with them, because Kaltop made a statement about cities being very, very environmentally friendly. So, this is definitely not our answer. Third says, because most people regard cities as places of disease and crime. Most people could be regarding cities as place of disease and crime, but Kaltop doesn't talk about disease and crime. He talks about the environmental friendliness of the cities and how they are probably the most environmentally friendly form of human settlement. So even if people were to think this, it should not actually jar them of what Kaltop is saying. So we can clearly say that this is not her answer. The fourth talks about, because most people do not consider city to be eco-friendly places. Now this also can be the answer, because people, if they think of cities to not be eco-friendly, and Kaltop is saying they are most eco-friendly, then it would definitely jar with them. We have to, of course, compare this with one. If most people consider cities to be very crowded and polluted, would they still get jarred? Maybe they would, but probably not as much as they would if they held belief 4. So we can eliminate option 1 and answer option 4 is our answer. So we can infer, that is, come to a conclusion that Kaltop's statement still jars with most people, because most people do not consider cities to be eco-friendly places.
Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get notifications of future videos.